After Chapter 11, I'm always thankful to return to the Somniel. It's time to catch our breath, get our bearings, and come to grips with our new status quo. We have new wares in the shops, more seals, and some metagame discussion now that I'm not worried about spoilers. First, the metagame. Fire Emblem games have an inherent positive feedback loop for your roster. Units who fight accrue resources, XP, SP, bond rank, supports. Those resources let them fight more, so they accrue more resources, and so on. If the designers weren't careful, a few lucky early units would snowball until no one else could compete. Engage is not that kind of snowball-y experience. If anything, it's the opposite. Chapter 11 is a big reason why. First, we've lost the emblems we had bond rank with. Lapis' Mercurius access no longer gives her an edge over new units. She does still have XP, skill inherits, and weapon proficiencies as rewards for my favoritism. That's where bases come in. I gave Lapis a lot of love, and Kagetsu still joined at the same level with much better stats. Kagetsu's built different, but even Zelkov starts strong to compensate for his later join time. From chapters 11 to 13, the player gets 9 recruits, 5 are truly the best of the best, and 2 are at least average. It's nice for players blindsided by chapter 10 to fall back on what's basically a complete team joining in the next few maps, but I can sympathize with anyone feeling some futility in the early game looking back. Why bother training anyone early if you get statistically superior units later? If your only goal is beating the game, most training really is a waste of time. That's not unique to Engage. Look at speedruns for almost any Fire Emblem game, and you'll rarely see more than 1 or 2 units do much. If you have more ambitious goals than simply reaching the end credits, however, there's plenty to gain from early training. I'll show different ways of keeping units relevant as I use my new seals. Let's start strong with Amber. Kagetsu has massive stat leads, because of course he does. Amber does have 2 things Kagetsu doesn't, Canter and Momentum. They give Amber player phase mobility and damage even Kagetsu can't match. I've also given him weapon proficiencies Kagetsu can't acquire without DLC. Let's use those weapon proficiencies and get my favorite guy a spiffy new class. He promotes into either Paladin or Wolf Knight. New weapon types are almost always better than S rank in a single one. Wolf Knight's no exception, but Amber may not seem like a great fit for an anti-mage class with low-weight weapons, even if he rocks the class outfit. Amber can shine in Wolf Knight, but he usually needs heavy investment to do it. Roy or Lyn, a good forge, stat boosts, expensive skill inherits, etc. Since I'm not staying in either, I didn't give him knives, so Lance Paladin it is. Paladin's well-rounded stats are rarely the best choice for any one build, and they're always vulnerable to breaks. There's normally some other class that does whatever you're looking for better. What's Amber looking for? Big single-hit damage on player phase. That means axes, they have significantly higher might for those one-shots. Having 2 weapon types gives him more flexibility, so ideally he'd have axes and his innate lances. 6 movement's also important for momentum and aspiring hero. That leaves Great Knight, which is fine but already covered by Lapis, and Wyvern, which is Wyvern. As is tradition, Wyvern's flight and access to 2 weapon types are quote-unquote balanced, with one of the best class skills and fantastic stats. Air Raid's perfect for Amber, it works well with Aspiring Hero, and it gives him a lot of kills he wouldn't get otherwise. Amber would rather have A axes, but A lances means he can take the uncontested Représailles sitting in my convoy, or use the Brave Lance later. Amber will be going places other units can't, one-shotting frail enemies with momentum, doubling slow ones with Air Raid, and hitting like a truck with Engage attacks. If you have a unit you love as much as I love Amber, this is the kind of special treatment I'd recommend if you want them to earn their keep. There are only so many premium resources that make units truly great. Sure, Amber with Roy and Wolf Knight can dominate, but Panette usually does it better, and there's only one Roy. You should follow your heart over a spreadsheet any day of the week, but personally I enjoy using my favorites more when I know they're earning their spot. Amber will do things no one else can for the rest of the game, and for a totally complete build, 1000 SP in books is a bargain. I didn't say much about Citrinne's promotion in chapter 11, but she's pretty similar to Amber. If you put everyone in Mage Knight, Citrinne just has the highest magic full stop. For Cavalry Bonded Shield with Lyn, you may prefer someone else with extra reliability or speed, but often magic's the main thing you're looking for. Anna's in the same boat, exceptional enough that Ivy's existence is not a death sentence. These units aren't the norm, they actually do have the numbers to keep it close against the very best units in the game. What can a unit like my physical Jean, who doesn't have sky-high strength or magic, do to make the training I've given him pay off? It's definitely time for him to start pulling his weight, and he needs a promotion for that. Sniper only has bows, which is normally when you stop deliberating and go bow knight. If you keep reading, it does have 1 extra strength and dexterity, S bows, covert bonuses, and a class skill boosting crit. Sniper's growths, doubled by expertise, give Jean comically high dexterity. As I discussed in chapter 11 though, really high dex isn't very useful unless you have a royal proc skill or something. Bow knight lets you attack at 1 range with good weapons, can give you a 1-2 range option, has 1 extra movement, and has better speed. Normally this isn't close. A player phase unit needs high movement and flexibility, not a slightly higher crit chance. The most important way to boost crit chances is doubling, so even there sometimes Bow Knight is better. Neither class is incredible, but Sniper is arguably the worst class in Engage, and Bow Knight is not. The thing is, I'm building Jean to do player phase crit stuff, and I could live with being locked to bows. Sniper's more appealing than it's ever been before. I will unleash Sniper Jean, eventually. For now, however, Bow Knight's the play. The movement in particular will be crucial. Given his terrible build and my other units competing for axes and lances, we'll go with swords. Besides, I figure it's good to make sure he stays in his lane by denying him good 1-2 range. With Tiki's help, Jean's build will become workable, and he'll have exceptional crit rates and attack speed. With a solid chance to sextuple any base damage, any boosts get great returns. If you want a good bow class, Warrior's pretty clearly your best bet. It has way better underlying stats than you'd expect. For units like Jean who are weighed down, it has better attack speed than Bow Knight. Bow Knight's supposed to be the fast class. Warrior has 5 extra strength and HP on top of that. I'd rather have Jean double down on archery, however, and the archer line will set him apart in a way Warrior won't. With a lot of planning and the DLC, I can afford to up the difficulty by investing more into peripheral units, but you may want more efficient roleplayers so you can funnel more into your best units. Warrior is a great fit for low investment units who need a high floor. If you share my appreciation for large rosters, player phase builds like this Amber and Jean are a good idea. Enemy phase can have a too many cooks problem. It's easier to plan when enemies only have 1 target, and you generally need a lot of investment to hit benchmarks. You rarely want more than a couple enemy phase juggernauts, and there are more than a couple good candidates joining around now. Instead of choosing one of Amber or Panette to live their best life and benching the other one, which normally does not end well for my alpaca boy, you can use 2 builds that don't compete for resources and deploy them both. That brings us to Chloé, who's trickier to set apart than you'd think. Her stats are, in a vacuum, incredible. She's more than capable of dominating as a bonded shield sweeper in, say, Sword Griffin. The thing is, Ivy and 2 units we'll get soon just do that a little better, and it really is a job for one person. Chloé has early skills over the new recruits, and certainly with something expensive like Sword Power 3 she'll stand out, but for me Chloé poses a conundrum. She's generally excellent, but we're gonna get even more generally excellent units soon, and Chloé's speed isn't as rare as Citrinne's magic as far as exceptional stats go. That's where the DLC comes in. Bond rank with DLC emblems is an incumbency advantage that units keep after Chapter 10. It tilts the meta a bit in favor of the Fiorne and Brodia units who need the boost. Chloé doesn't want Lyn or Lucina, so she'd end up fighting with everyone for the next magical emblem if she didn't have an alternative she already started building bond rank with. Veronica's a really nice fit for Griffin. Her early bond ranks give a unit a lot of support tools, and the later ones open up dominant enemy phase combat. I've been getting by just fine with 1 staff user, but there's now a Micaiah-shaped void in my team and my heart. Well, why? Micaiah! If you have a unit use nothing but staves, it's usually hard for them to pivot into stardom later. Veronica solves that, letting Chloé keep a thankless support role with the promise of eventual greatness. If anything, it's better if the unit with Contract and Summon Hero isn't doing anything someone else couldn't in combat. Lance Griffin has the advantage of Javelin access, which lets Chloé fight mages on enemy phase. The Flame Lance is strictly worse than the Levin Sword, however, so Lance Griffin Chloé struggles against anyone else. Sword Griffin's clearly best here. Sailine's Levin Sword is mostly up for grabs, and we aren't especially weak to mages. I haven't mentioned Wyvern because that's not what I'm going for, but Wyvern Chloé has essentially the same problem and solution. She's good, but not quite as good as Kagetsu and company, and they all compete for Roy and other sources of strength. The 3 Houses bracelet pairs well with her and Wyvern, and had Amber not taken that bracelet, she could have gotten that going early to stand out. For us though, Sword Griffin it is. I recommend this kind of healer by committee approach. Sometimes you need multiple staff uses in a turn, sometimes you don't need any. A few staff-curious units generally waste fewer actions than a single pure staff bot. They can do things no single unit can, and you don't have to feel like any of your team members are perennially wasting their talents. In a post-Micaiah world, we'll keep Chloé busy. Normally, I'd be out of promotions, but the Ancient Well gave me a Master Seal last time. That brings us to Alear. Alear can do a decent impression of Wyvern Chloé with exactly the same problem. Kagetsu and company just do it better, and they all compete for the strength boosts. Alear doesn't have any statistical edge over the likes of Kagetsu like Amber did. She doesn't have any DLC favoritism like Chloé. Without the investment people often give Alear, her stats are pretty terrible. Alfred has the same strength, and he hasn't seen the field since Chapter 8. How do we distinguish Alear if she can't stand out in combat? The answer? Support. Early on, investment matters more than personal stats. Anyone can dominate. Alear and Lapis have essentially the same stats, and my Lapis has been fantastic. The thing is, the enemies promote too, and you don't get a second promotion bonus. Lapis got 10 defense from going into Great Knight, but every future point comes one at a time. Later in the game, personal stats matter more, and the wheat separates from the chaff. You can still make Lapis or Alear your MVP, this is Engage, but that increases the game's difficulty, and you may not enjoy the extra challenges that come from using Diet Kagetsu over the real thing. Early combat does provide SP, and the benefits from skill inherits and weapon proficiencies persist even after the emblems leave. The way inherits are distributed makes it difficult to translate those resources into better combat. Canter is huge for player phase units, yes, but many prefer Lin's Speed Plus to Lance Power or Strength Plus. After Chapter 13, most units can find a physical class that works for them without the early weapon proficiencies. The same is not true for support. Favorite Food is irreplaceable until Celica returns, and for a unit mainly clicking Bondage Shield, few other skills have much value. A unit primarily using staves will benefit from Canter and Staff Mastery in a way that extra stats do very little to counterbalance. Staff proficiency is a long way off, so you're only even competing against the units with native staff access, or the everyman units, not Amber or Anna, but Alchrist or Alfred. The simplest way to give them a niche is to give them Canter and other support skills, collect a bunch of proficiencies, and then transition to using Lucina or Byleth later in the game. I'll mix things up as the game goes on, but for now Saline and Lapis will follow this trajectory. Before their combat falls off, they'll pivot to support. Alear is the best possible version of this template. With Marth carrying them through the early game, it's hard not to train them, and they'll get a lot of SP. Then they stand out through Divinely Inspiring, Convoy, and a perfect support list. An Alear with a bunch of weapon proficiencies and support skills is far better than Kagetsu at doing support. No combat build can say the same. You are normally better off putting Alear in a cavalry or flying class and using those Lucina synergies, but Lapis has that niche covered, and in a run like this one, showing off dragon synergies is too fun not to do. I enjoy the challenge of finding a spot where even the unhelpful synergies can shine, even if I won't always succeed. If you can't bear to watch a run where Alear doesn't have a ponytail, I understand. I'm sorry. Dragon child bases are awful, so even though Divine Dragon doesn't have the greatest stats, this promotion bonus feels amazing. She may not be one-rounding much of anything, but she will show off some cool stuff as a dragon, and I think for a run leaning into the story of Engage, having Alear embody the supportive team player she is in supports will be fitting. There's a cruel irony with support units in Fire Emblem, like Alear. If I had given Lapis the same treatment I've given Alear, if she were still a sword fighter with no Draco Shield, Speed Wing, or extra SP, she'd be a disaster. These stats, but with nothing else. Alear has an irreplaceable, unselfish personal skill and class, so uninvested Alear and invested Lapis is stronger than the reverse. But no good deed goes unpunished. Her reward for being such a team player is getting stuck with whatever I have lying around as Lapis gets all the resources and Lucina. I was actually prepared to delay this promotion even longer, but next map I need 6 movement on Alear so she can give other units Divinely Inspiring more effectively. That's it for promotions, so now let's go over the Armory and item shop. The Armory has restocked a lot of weapons we already saw. Since you're now a lot more likely to have more than one unit competing for a single weapon, it's good to have extra copies of stuff like the longbow. The range manipulation weapons, as always, are worth putting on everyone who can use them. The only new stuff here is a set of killer weapons. A unit's base crit rate is just half their dex. That means even your Sniper Jeans or Kagetsus only achieve reliable crits through weapons and skills. Killer weapons with a crit boosting engrave seem like a great way to augment damage and deal with the tough customers Engage throws at you. That's true. Many good builds use crits, and I certainly enjoy corny one-liners. That doesn't make killer weapons a good fit for most, however. Crit's only good when you start relying on it. I'd much rather have 0 crit than 20, because a 20% chance isn't part of my plans and can only mess me up. You only get a few crit boosting engraves, which are really what takes them over the threshold of usability. Often a single killer axe and killer bow suffice for the whole game. The item shop gives me more to get excited about. Besides the class seals, we get another set of staves. I've already given my obstruct pitch. It's awesome, buy it, use it, feel smart when it makes a strat work. We'll get more obstructs fairly soon, so go nuts. There are no-brainer purchases. Next is Physic. Ivy joined with the first copy we've seen. Physic has lower base healing than heal or mend, but it has range. That doesn't feel like a big deal because we're so used to Micaiah, but trust me, it is. It lets a frailer unit like Fram heal without entering enemy range. It also has higher base XP, counterbalancing the level penalty that has gutted heal XP by this point. You don't get unlimited physics yet, but there's no reason to be stingy. As HP pools increase, you may find it doesn't heal to full, but Staff Mastery can help with that. Freeze and Silence are status staves. Your supply of these is tightly controlled, but they handle especially tough enemies in ways you can't easily replace. Many formations have a single foe who would mess you up through breaks, magic damage, etc. Freeze and Silence can temporarily remove those units from the equation so you can clean up their friends. I tend to save these unless I literally don't know how to work around them, but that's not the right idea. You should be using these where they're helpful, even if they're not absolutely necessary. I'll try to grow and use them for cool stuff in this series. I'm happy with my obstruct use so far, so we'll see if I can keep it up. Even if you're just using these for XP, that's way better than letting them rot in storage. One last shout out I'll make for staves. Tempest Trials are cool in part because they reset your inventory afterwards. If Hoarder mentality keeps you from trying these out, I'd recommend loading up one of those trials and going wild. I have a save file near the end of the game I often use to test things out. It's quite convenient if, for instance, you're not sure whether Silence affects the Levin Sword. It doesn't.
Do come again.
That is everything. Next time, we'll meet some new recruits and take a breather map.